Well, hello everyone. This is Tommy at World at War Comics, and I am so excited about this next guest. But before we get into that, hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you hit that ring bell. That way you're notified at all of our interviews. And I want to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by cienchiles.com, cienchiles.com. Cien Chili's, the best hot sauce you will ever buy in your life, I promise you. And when you go to cienchiles.com and at checkout, you could put in comics and save 15% off your total order. So an amazing opportunity for you to try this hot sauce. I promise you, you're going to love it. I use it all the time. Also, this podcast is brought to you by Comic Crusaders, the best in comic book reviews. They do comic book reviews, music reviews, movie reviews. They even do interviews of some of the top talent in comic books. So go to comiccrusaders.com. All right, without further ado, like I said, I'm so excited about this next guest. If you are a huge Spawn fan, you will know that Todd McFarlane just announced a bunch of different titles that will be launched in 2024. And one of those titles is Rat City. This is a futuristic Spawn, and he has tapped Erica Schultz to be the writer for this comic book. And I am so excited to be able to have her on the show to talk about that process, talk about the excitement of Rat City, talk about the process of writing and creating and developing, the partnership with Shay, the artist who is on this. This comic book is going to be so amazing. Erica is incredible. You're going to love this interview. Without further ado, here's Erica and I talking about Rat City, the new comic coming from Spawn in 2024. Enjoy, everybody. Well, hello, everyone. This is World at War Comics. I am Tommy, and my special guest today, Erica Schultz. Thank you, Erica, for joining. You probably already know her if you've read anything from ASM or Marvel or Moon Knight, the What If series that just came out. Obviously, you have a long career in comics, Erica, that I would love to jump into. But how are you today? Let's start there.
We're doing okay. We're
right.
hanging in just like everybody else.
I know. I think we're all trying to figure things out. So
I know.
I think it's a good place to be. Well, Erica, I'm really excited to have you on. Obviously, big news dropped in the Spawn world, and that you'll be taking over Rat City, which sounds phenomenal. But before we get into that, I thought it would be really cool just to kind of go way back and figure out how you got into comics, what your passion is around there, and then just kind of work a little bit through your history. Because, doing a little bit of research that I did, Erica, you've done quite a bit in comics, and I think everyone needs to know that.
Yeah, I've kind of been all over the place. In terms of how I got into comics, I have an older brother, and I used to read, whatever he came back with from the spinner rack, which at the time was Claremont and Byrne or Claremont and Lee, Jim Aparo on Batman.
Yeah.
Really like what a lot of people look at as like classics and like formative kind of books.
Yeah.
So I mean, I grew up mostly on the big two, and obviously this was before Image even came about, but it wasn't until college in the mid to late 90s that a friend of mine had really said, you should check out this, Spawn and some of the, Wildcats, some of the other Image titles and stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, like it's superhero, but it's a different type of superhero. And I thought that was kind of an interesting take because, all these superhero stories, I mean, they're all archetypal stories and stuff. So I thought that was an interesting take. And yeah, I just, when the Justice League cartoon and the X-Men Evolution came out, it just really reignited my love for, Marvel and DC characters. And, and I started picking up comics again, and it was, it was a lot of fun. And that's when they were doing like Ultimates, like when the Ultimate Universe first came out. With Marvel and DC was doing a lot of experimentation and stuff. And it was just really interesting. I've always loved visual storytelling in general. And I think that's like just a really great way to, you read a novel and you have like an image in your head, and then you realize that it's not what the novelist, the author was really looking at. But when you see a comic, it all comes together. And yes, there's still imagination between those panels, but it sort of gives you a head start on on what's really happening. So I mean, I love the medium. It's a great medium.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I spend a lot of money, and me and my wife have sit downs quite often about the amount of money I spend on comics. So I certainly follow that. I love it as well. As far as comics go, once you started getting into comics, where did that passion for like writing come from and storytelling? Was that kind of early on, before comics, or did you find that love when you were reading comics?
I always like I always wrote and drew when I was a kid. Like I
Yeah.
would, you know, write short stories and all kind. I mean, I think every kid kind of did that. And I was an English major in college,
Wow.
so even though my major was mostly literature, we still had to take creative writing courses and
Yeah.
such, just, you know, part of the curriculum. So I mean, you know, just writing stories is something that's always pretty much come naturally to me. And when I got my first job out of college, I was working at an ad agency, and
Hmm.
I was originally working as an assistant. And as an assistant, you're basically a catch-all. So,
Um,
you know, we've got this 15-second commercial that nobody wants to do. Throw it, you know, you write it, Erica, or you know, you
yeah.
storyboard it. And so I was doing storyboarding. I was writing. I was doing a little bit of everything. And when I finally got promoted, I was first promoted as a copywriter,
Hmm.
and then they sort of laterally moved me as an art director. So I was doing storyboarding and such.
Mm.
And, you know, it's kind of, you know, stupid to say, but it is the truth. You know, advertising is in and of itself a visual medium, you know,
Sure.
in
Yeah.
terms of, you know, storytelling and such,
Good point. Yeah.
because you're telling a story to get somebody to buy a product. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
capitalism at its finest kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Exactly.
But I mean, but that's the thing, is
Yeah.
you're trying to tell a story that allows the person watching this to say, hey, that's something that I relate to. This is a product that I want to buy.
Right.
um so whereas it was sort of like a soft launch for me, that's sort of, you know, where I was, you know, professionally doing visual storytelling. And then after I got laid off, because everybody got laid off in like 2007, 2008,
Yeah.
um, I reached out to a studio that we had been working with,
Yeah.
a studio called Continuity Studios. And I said, you know, hey, I'm looking for work. And they said, well, that's great, because we just got this huge project and we're looking for warm bodies.
Mm.
So I jumped on, and that project was the Astonishing X-Men motion comic,
Oh wow.
Gifted, which was the first 6 issues of that John Cassaday, Joss Whedon run.
Oh wow.
And so we were doing, you know, we were doing digital art, we were, you know, we were doing animation, all this stuff.
Hmm.
And I really just, you know, I went to the studio and I stayed there for, you know, 8 years almost. And while I was there, you know, we worked on the Astonishing X-Men, but then we were working on Batman Odyssey
Oh
and
wow.
Coming of the Superman and the first X-Men, and all of these other comic books. And I finally got to see the other side of, you
Yeah.
know, not going to the shelf as a consumer and getting the
Hmm.
book, but seeing the ins and outs of what it takes to actually make it, and even the minutia of like lettering and, you
Yeah.
know, and all this other stuff. So I mean, and I was doing everything from digital backgrounds to color assists to
Oh wow.
inking on boards, um, you know, ran the gamut. And I really got my education there.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so when I decided, you know, maybe I should start looking into this as opposed to just sort of writing stories in notebooks and then putting them away, maybe I
Yeah.
can look into translating some of those stories into
Hmm.
comics.
Yeah.
And one of the other artists at the studio was a man named Vicente Alcazar. And I had written a story, like an espionage type story called M3. And I pitched it to him, and I showed him the script, and he came back a couple days later and he's like, I really like this, let's do this. So we did M3. We put it out ourselves. And it took us about 3.5, 4 years, but we did 12 issues, so 2 full story arcs. And then once that book was out, that sort of became my portfolio piece, because an artist can go to an editor and show them a portfolio and the editor can flip through pages. As a writer, you have to really make a book. So I got that into editors' hands at around 2012. And I didn't hear anything from anybody for a couple of years. And then I got a call from an editor at Marvel saying, and back in like 2014, 2015, saying, hey, this, old graphic novel just dropped on my desk, and we'd love for you to work on an OGN for a TV show, because Marvel and ABC both owned by Disney. So I was like, oh, okay. And that was my first paid job, was, writing this graphic novel, which was a prequel to a TV show that had been out for a couple of years. And then I was like, oh, okay, great. I got Marvel work. And then I never heard from them for like 4 years after that. So I mean, everybody's like, oh, you're an overnight success. I'm like, I've been at this a while. So I didn't hear it from Marvel until like 2018 again. And in the meantime, I was doing some work with Dynamite and a couple of smaller IPs and such. And then I was like, oh, cool, I got a Daredevil one shot. Like now I'm really in the mix. And then I didn't hear anything from Marvel again for another 3-4 years. So it's fits and starts. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved the medium. I love telling stories. I love bringing characters, whether they're new characters or old characters, like bringing them to new audiences and such. And I mean, it's a hell of a thing to be like, what do you do? Oh, well, I write comic books. I write stories about people jumping around rooftops in their pajamas, shooting webs out of their hands and stuff. So I can't hear you.
How about now, Eric?
Oh, I got you now. Yes.
I swear, so much for paying all this money for this thing. It weighs like 400 pounds and does nothing.
Well, it's like I mean, you can cut all this out, but I have the Bluetooth headphones that, the expensive Bluetooth headphones. And like the second I walk a foot outside of this room, they cut out. I was like, what's the point?
I know. I have a cord on it, right?
Exactly.
This happened yesterday. I haven't had a problem, and I've had it for about 5 months, and then all of a sudden it's just, anyways, crazy. It figures, right when I'm in an interview.
Of course.
I forgot where we were at, Eric, to be quite honest, but I think we were just going back and forth. I feel like with Marvel, I mean, that's got to be exciting to get the opportunities, but then heart-wrenching that you get this opportunity, you don't hear anything for 2 years, you get this opportunity, you don't hear anything for 3 years. I mean, how do you manage that emotionally? I mean, it seemed like you made up your mind, like, okay, now I am actually in comics, and then it was kind of brought to you taken. I mean, that's got to be miserable.
I mean, I will say that one of the good things about having so many experiences in comics in terms of writing, lettering, editing, doing backgrounds, etc., is that when the writing work wasn't coming in, I was then lettering books, or I was editing books and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I was remaining in the area. It just wasn't, hey, we need this script. And it would be, like you get a one shot here from Dynamite, or you get, like a 10-page short from, or an 8-page short from Vertigo or something like that. But it was mostly like, okay, well, I'm still, the editors still have me in their inbox because I'm lettering something or I'm editing something for them. And so it was just sort of like maintaining in that orbit. And I think that was important. Also, I mean, I guess I'm just too damn stubborn to
I love it. Yeah, I love it. You know what you want.
Well, I mean, most people would be like, well, if I didn't get a call back from a company for 2-3 years, I would just give up. And I'm like, yeah, but I really want it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give up.
Yeah.
And I also found that the second that I throw my hands up and say, fine, I'm over, I'm done, that's it, I'm done, is within 24 hours, something comes along, as if the universe is telling me this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well,
as bizarre as that sounds.
No, I think that's pretty awesome. And it seems like you're getting so much like well-rounded experience throughout the entire process that maybe like a chief editor role is in your future or something, because you've almost done everything, right?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a graphic novel that came out earlier this year. It was July, August is when it came out, called Paper Planes from
Yeah.
Maverick.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to be able to edit that book.
Oh, okay.
And I worked with Jenny Wood and Dozer, two phenomenal creators. And if I never edit another book in my entire life,
Yeah.
I'm fine, because we're so proud of that book.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and you know, at this point, if I ever retire from writing, maybe I will go back to teaching or go to editing or whatever. But at this point, I think I still have a couple more stories I want to tell.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you'll be telling some stories for a while with all the big
Yeah,
news.
we'll see. We'll
Can I ask?
see.
Yeah,
Knock on
yeah.
wood.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. So I'm really excited about Rat City. But before we get to Rat City, I saw
Yes.
that you actually worked with the Kubert School of Art.
Yes.
Can you kind of share how you got involved with that? Because I've actually interviewed Emma Kubert, and you know the Kubert family has meant so much to comics for so long. I
Oh
just
yeah, they're like the
super
first
excited that
family
you
of
got a chance.
comics.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I had Anthony Marks, who is the president of the school. He's also an alum of the school.
Okay.
He was an editor at Dynamite, and he was
Mhm.
my editor on Charmed. And
Okay.
so after Charmed had come out, we had hung out at a convention. I want to say it was like 2018, 2019. And he said, you know, the school, we're going through some changes at the school, but we'd really love to talk to you about maybe teaching writing.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, oh, okay, you know, we'll see. And we had some meetings, we had some conversations, and I just turned around and I said, sure. And so I taught the writing class to the third year students, which is it's a 3-year school. Now they've actually just announced a 4th year program that they're putting together. But at the time it was 3 years. So I was teaching the third year, like the seniors.
Hmm.
And then I was teaching the second years, more like storyboarding, storytelling, how
Mhm.
to take a script and to visualize it and then, you know, pace it. So it was sort of like your second year class was sort of prepping you for the
Yeah.
third year class. And I did that for about 2.5 years, and I taught some of the online courses too. And it was interesting to see how you would hand the same script to a classroom between my 2 or 3 classes. It'd be like 35 people, and every single one of them would come back
Hmm.
with a different angle, with a different take.
Yeah.
And it was just, I thought that that was just a really interesting sort of exercise to see, to sort of get an insight and to see where everybody's coming from.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds like an amazing experience. So that's pretty cool. You know,
Yeah.
when you go in, I was kind of curious. So you did, at least on ASM, right? I think you did the first 20 pages and there's a short story at the end.
Yeah.
You're not on like ASM regularly. And then you're
No,
to do like a
that's Zeb
20,
Wells.
yeah, yeah,
Zeb Wells
exactly.
is
So I mean,
writing ASM. Yeah.
when you're not writing ASM, right? The regular ASM, and then you're called to do like an annual like this. Like, how do you prep for that? I mean, were you already reading ASM, or do you have to go back and do some like that? That would be stressful for me to be put on a book that I haven't been on, and then just do 20 pages, and then you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that ASM book is actually, in my mind, it's
Yeah.
kind of like Hallows Eve #6.
Okay. Yeah. That makes
So,
sense. Yeah.
so I didn't. So even though I had been reading the Zeb Wells JR run,
You're right.
um, I got a couple of scripts ahead of time,
Mhm.
just so I knew where things were going,
Right.
for that. But the way when I sat down with the editors on that, because the Hallows Eve editor is also the Spider-Man editor, Nick Lowe and Kana McGahey.
Oh, okay.
And when I sat down with them, we sort of thought about it as, okay, well, this is going to be kind of more like Hallows Eve #6.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So look at it, you know, and issue #3 of Hallows Eve had Spidey in it. This was a
Yeah.
little more, instead of it being like 20% Spidey, 80% Hallows Eve, it was more of like a 35-40% Spidey,
Yeah.
60 Hallows Eve. So I just sort of added a little more Spidey to it. but yeah, I mean, it flows pretty quick because at the end of Hallows Eve 5 is when she basically tells Ben, like, I've got a plan. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
ASM Annual is kind of her enacting that
That
plan.
plan. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. No, very cool. I always wonder that when a writer comes in and just does a short thing and write, that would just be so stressful for me. But it sounds like you with you doing the first 5 issues of Hallows Eve, that makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense. And then after reading this, it makes a lot more sense too. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I did. So Saladin Ahmed and Aaron Cooter are doing Daredevil right now.
Mhm.
And I had a meeting with Saladin because he's going to be, because the Daredevil gang war that I'm writing
Right.
needs to flow with what he's writing for
Uh,
that and what he and Aaron are doing for that. So we
right.
sort of, had to sit down and, like, I was taking notes. Okay, this is where your story's going. Where
Right.
can I find a way to fit, and sort of weave within that story?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would think that kind of collaboration would need to take place, right? So that way the reader, like me, as I'm going into it, right, that whole universe is starting to make sense. So that's pretty cool. All
yeah.
right, now to Rat City, if that's okay. I'm really
No,
excited.
that's fine.
The character looks so badass. I mean, he looks absolutely amazing. The artwork looks incredible just from the little snippets that have been kind of shared by either you, Z, or
Jay,
oh, is it Jay? I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Jay, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, both of you have kind of did that one snippet where it kind of shows him with his mask on, mask off. He
yeah.
looks so badass, and I'm really excited about a futuristic Spawn that takes place. So maybe we could talk a little bit. I did read that you had met with Thomas Healey.
Mhm.
I think was it last year at Comic-Con?
It was not this past New York Comic Con, but last
Yeah.
year, and we had met, and Joe Prado, who is an artist and inker,
Yeah.
and he works with Jay. Joe had said, if you're looking for some new blood for writing, talk to Erica, talk to a couple of people. And
Yeah.
so Thomas came by and he was like, oh, we're going to be doing some different things. We're going to be doing, we're branching out and doing some new stuff.
Hmm.
Maybe you could do something for Scorched, which is like their team book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe you could do something for She Spawn or whatever. And I was like, yeah, we'll figure something out. And it had taken a bit because there's New York Comic Con, and then there's Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then, like, sort of everything sort of falls to the wayside.
Yeah.
So it took a couple months, but we finally got on a Zoom call, and Thomas was like, yeah, we could do this, we could do that. And again, this is like the universe just saying, this is what you're supposed to be doing, because my mouth opened and words came out. It was just like, what if we did something like way in the future, like 100 years into the future, and it was like the Spawn wasn't dead, but we can bring in, the sort of like corporate greed, kind of like all technology kind of firm, and just basically make it about, the fact that corporations have taken over
Yeah.
and gone sort of like a little bit transmetropolitan, but even farther than that.
Mm.
And and he was just like, this is very interesting. Like, we never really thought about this idea. So he said, write up a pitch.
Yeah.
So I wrote, 2-3 pages about it. And then we had a meeting with Todd, and Todd was like, all right, tell me what you think. And again, my mouth opened, words came out. It was like an out of body experience. And my brain was like, you're on a Zoom call with Todd McFarlane and you're just rambling. Like, do you understand what's happening here? And Todd just sort of like kept nodding his head, and he's like, okay, cool. And I'm sort of programmed to think of everything in anywhere from 4 to 6 issues. Like, tell your entire story in 4 to 6 issues, because in my mind, I'm never going to have a chance. I'm never going to get hired again. So
Yeah.
just tell that story. So I said to Todd, I was like, well, he's like, well, how many issues are you thinking this is going to be? And I said, well, how many do you want? He's like, well, how many do you need? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, how many do you need to tell the story that you want to tell? I was like, oh, I could probably do it in 5 or 6 issues. He goes, okay, can you do it in 5 or 6 issues, or do you need 8 issues?
Mm.
And I said, well, you know, I can do it in however many you want. He's like, that's not the question.
Yeah.
And it was probably, I mean, no shade to anybody, but it was very interesting that he was approaching it as, Erica, what is it that you feel that you need to tell the story to the best of its ability? Do you need 5 issues? Do you need 12 issues? And he kept saying, he's like, okay, so you could do it in 8. Could you do it in 12?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, why does he keep pushing it? Because looking at me as a creator, he's like, I'm pushing, and he didn't say these words, but like, this is sort of, you know, where I was getting the feel from, was that like, I'm pushing you to tell the story that you want to tell without the constraints that you are normally thinking of.
Yeah.
You know, like Hallows Eve, it's like, okay, you got 5 issues. You know, the DareDevil story that I'm doing, you got 4 issues.
Right.
Or the X-23, you got 5 issues. You know, whereas he's like, where do you want to take the story, and how far do you think you can push it? And I want you to push it farther. And I thought that was really very cool.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the first times that someone of his caliber was like, no, push yourself harder. You can do more with this.
Yeah.
And so I had only come into this meeting with 1 arc pitch and thinking, again, you know, 4 to 6 issues. And he's like, our next meeting, I want to see a 2nd arc. I want to see you outline a 2nd arc for me.
That's cool.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I outlined a 2nd arc and I sent it to Thomas, and Thomas had it for less than a day. And he's like, yeah, I think Todd kind of wants an ongoing from you. And I was like, wait, where did that come from?
That is so awesome, though.
And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, he's thinking like a minimum of like 30 issues. And my brain has just, you know, and prior to that, the longest, I mean, I had done M3, which was 12 issues, which is 2 story arcs. And then everything else was these short stories. I had a story with Dark Horse called Forgotten Home, which was 8 issues. It was 1 arc, but it was 8 issues. And I was now like, I have to think in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a challenge. And at the same time, it's like, it's a challenge that I'm like dreading, but also that I'm like really, really excited about.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited really for the first time I'm hearing that this is going to be a little bit longer than I was thinking it was going to be too. So that's
awesome. I mean, the first arc is I'm working on finishing the script for issue 4, but I'm kind of simultaneously writing for 4, 5, and 6 at the same time.
Okay.
So I'm sort of going back and forth between the 3, and I only have like 3 or 4 more pages to issue 4 to finish. And I'm kind of looking at this, okay, like, all right, once 6 ends, where are we going to go? Like, where's 7 going to start? And it's to the point where it's like, you know, like I'm writing, I always print my notes out, and then I'm like writing, you know, notes in the margins, and like issue 7 will start here and blah, 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 you know, kind of thing. So I'm just sort of trying to remember to transcribe everything into the computer. Because I still write everything in notebooks. And, you know, I keep telling myself, like, you have to sit down, you have to put it in the computer, because you're not going to like, you know, this isn't the typewriter days, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. It's exciting and scary as all hell, but it's very exciting. And the fact that I've been given that leeway, and the fact that he has enough faith in me and in the work, I think is really, it's a hell of a boost, especially someone of his caliber, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look at my background. I'm a Todd McFarlane fan. I have been my whole life, so, or like since the 90s for sure. But yeah, I mean, that is so cool that you've been given that kind of trust. Because I think that also, I mean, you tell me, but if that happened to me, I would feel like that creative freedom would be able to flow a lot easier than without those constraints, right? It seems like whatever you need, just take it and tell a really good story, as opposed to fit everything you can in 5 issues, because that's all you're getting. That's got to be an amazing feeling. I mean, wow, that's so cool.
It is, because like I as I'm writing, you know, 4, 5, 6, I was saying to myself, you know, you have to give yourself time now. You don't have to rush anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So where 6 ends, if this was the only 6 issues, then where 6 ends, people are going to be like, what the actual hell?
Yeah.
So I'm like forcing that.
Yeah.
I'm basically saying, all right, you told me I have plenty of room,
Yeah.
so I'm taking the room. Like, you can't
You're like
cancel this after
scared to
6
go to a
issues.
7th issue, right?
I was like, you can't cancel this after
Yeah.
6 issues because you're not going to answer. Like, you're going to answer like 1 out of like 10 questions.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, that's actually something that I try and do in terms of storytelling, and that was something that I used to tell the students, is that like,
Yeah.
every issue you need to ask 2 questions, and at the end you need to answer 1, but then continue asking more. So
Yeah.
yes, there are questions that are answered in each issue,
Yeah.
but there are more and more questions that start building up.
Yeah.
And it's not just, and when you think about it, Jay and I are not just introducing this character,
Yeah.
we're introducing this world.
Yeah.
And the world is totally different. Like the story starts in 2107. So the world is completely different, the technology is different, but something that is sort of ubiquitous is humans and greed, and
Yeah.
sort
That
of
feature doesn't change much even after 100 years.
yeah. And that's kind of the thing, is like this idea of we can jump 90 years into the future, but some of the things are still going to stay the same.
Agree.
For good or for ill.
Yeah. No, fully agree. I could share this only because it's on the internet, so obviously we don't want to give anything away, right? But it follows Peter, is it Cairn?
Cairn. Yeah.
Cairn. Yeah. And he's missing legs. He was in the military, right? And so he's an amputee, and he gets these legs that have the nanites from 301, right? Spawn 301. So I mean, that is also very unique and completely different than anything that's happened in Spawn as well. Can you share a little bit how you came up with that? Because that is super different from the work Todd's created.
So one of the things that I was told when sort of like working this out was, do something Todd can't do himself.
Yeah.
And first of all, I'm like, what can't he do? But this idea of, I wanted to really lean on some ideas that people sort of forget. So like, my dad was a Vietnam veteran, and he had PTSD. My grandfather was a World War II veteran and an amputee.
Yeah.
So like, I always joked, like, I always knew grandpa as only having 1.5 legs. And so this idea of sort of combining experiences that I have with these people, and finding a way to put it into the future. So Peter and his best friend Reese, who we're gonna meet in the 2nd issue, or we meet him in the 1st issue, because we see where Peter loses his legs and where Reese loses his hands. Okay. So they get fitted with these prosthetics that have nanites. Now, when Al Simmons, it's called the necroplasmic detonation, but I call it the God bomb.
Yeah, that's better, easier to remember for sure.
Exactly. So 300-301, when Al blows everything up.
Yeah.
That explosion ripples across space and time.
Oh, wow.
It ripples across every timeline. It ripples across, the future, the past, everything. Yeah. And that's really the catalyst for this, because Peter and the nanites in his legs are infected by this God bomb. And that's where, because the old lore was you couldn't be a Spawn unless you were dead. And then they changed that. And then you had other people that were Spawn, but Peter's not dead, but he is a Spawn. Right. Because now he has not only these things in his legs, but he also has, the essence of heaven, of hell, of Al Simmons himself, because
and is he a descendant of Al at the same time, or I thought
no, he is not.
Oh, okay. I thought I read something.
Who's saying he's a descendant of Al. He's not a
I thought I
descendant.
read that. I actually read that online.
No.
Maybe it was a
That
fan
could-
or something that I read. I don't know.
It's a fan. No, that could be a fan theory, but no. As of right now, we have no plans on making him a descendant of Al.
Okay. Yeah.
Will he go into the past to see Al? Maybe. Will Al come to the future to see Peter? Maybe. You know, I've got plenty of issues I got to fill out with stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not, leaving anything off the table right now. But yeah, so I mean, it's gonna be really interesting to see. The other thing is that, like, one of the things that made Al, sort of like the rogue spawn, was the fact that he had this sense of duty and such.
Yeah.
And Malaboja only saw the fact that he was a killer.
Yeah.
That's all he saw. He didn't see, Al's honor or anything else.
That's the only thing worth he saw, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that made him worthy to sort of break free of Clown and everybody like that. And when you look at those early issues when he's, living in Rat City with like Bobby and Bootsy and all of them, and they're all vets of Vietnam, vets of Korea, vets of, North Africa.
Yeah.
They are all, the down and out. And that's where the title Rat City comes from, because that's the section of the Bowery that Al was the king of Rat City.
Yeah. That's so awesome.
So that's where it's sort of like we went back and forth, like, is it Cyberspawn? Is it this? And like, and we kept going back and forth, and my first couple of drafts would have Cyberspawn at the top because we didn't really know what the name was going to be.
Yeah.
And then we sort of came up with this like list that I sent to Thomas in terms of like, what about this? What about this? And it was just like, like word salad of like, what could and one of the titles that we had talked about was Rat City. And I think that's number 42 or 43 is when it's first referred to as Rat City. I have the giant fat Spawn compendium, so
it would be so cool, like maybe after you get to like 30 and they can't create like a compendium of the first 30, it would be really cool to have a list of all those names for fans to see what it could have been called. Like you might not be doing that anytime soon, but it would be really fun just to see everything that you considered before you came to Rat City.
Well, I will say this, one of the titles, and here's a scoop for you, one of the titles that I proposed was Adapt or Die.
Adapt or Die. That's awesome.
Because that is the motto of Peter's army unit.
Oh, that's so
Adapt or
cool.
Die.
That is so cool.
And that is something that comes up, when he and his compatriot think that they're dying, they're like, that's something that they keep trying to tell themselves.
Yeah,
we're gonna get through this, adapt or die kind of thing. So
yeah, well, I think a lot of like really true Spawn fans that have read issues 1 to almost 350, right, we're about to hit 350, once they see that name Rat City, which they all have by now, they already are going to make that connection and know that's the right name. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And it's the section of the Bowery that
in every, like, even 100 years, there's going to be a Rat City because of that nature we were talking about, right? Human nature, nothing's going to change, and you're still going to have people down and out.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking a lot about like Mega City 1. We were talking a lot about like the favelas in Brazil and in South America, where people are literally like stacked on top of each other. And we were talking about like even going way into the past, talking about like the tenements of the Bowery from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and such. So these were sort of all these ideas that we were sort of pulling from visually, and everybody goes Blade Runner, and I get it. That's like that's the standard, and I'm not saying no to that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Sid Mead's work on that, and Ralph McQuarrie's work on Star Wars originally. And so like we started saying, okay, so there's that, and then there's Transmetropolitan that we can sort of look in, sort of like the griminess of it.
Mm.
And there was a book that I had co-written with Van Jensen, and Anike was our artist, and it's called Bylines in Blood, and it sort of bridges the gap. And it got to the point where I was actually, and I told Anike this, and she was like blown away by this. I said, yeah, I was pulling pages from that we had done as reference for Jay when looking at stuff. But yeah, I mean, very like Mega City One, Judge Dredd kind of feel and stuff, where, the rich people are like rich as hell, and that there's just this chasm between people.
Yeah. It's so sad. I want to think that that's not going to happen in 100 years, but I think we all kind of know it will because of human nature, right?
Well, that's the thing, is it's part of human nature, and it's a tale. It literally is tales all this time. I mean, there's the idea that there's only really 7 stories ever written. And one of them is rags to riches, and one of them is the completion of the quest. But this idea of somebody wanting more and others having less, that is something that you can trace 4,000 years ago. When was writing a thing? 6,500 years ago or whatever it was. That's something that you can trace in any story.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. Can we talk about the relationship between you and Shay and how that goes back and forth? Because a writer and an artist, the artist really tells a big portion of the story as well as the writer, right? Because of it's a comic book, right? So it's a visual. How does that dance kind of work between you two? Because you want to be on the same page, and as you're writing, right, the visual needs to help tell part of the story that you're just not able to tell because there's not enough room to write it down. Can you kind of talk about how important that relationship is with an artist and a writer?
Yeah, I mean, Jay is fantastic. He will send layouts, so I'll write a full script, so I'll have page and panel breakdowns, and my sort of mantra with any artist is, look, if what I'm communicating in this page you can do in 4 panels, do it in 4. If you need 6, take 6, because I write an average of 5 to 6 panels per page. And I always say, as long as the information is being communicated, that's fine, because everything has, it's on a specific page to go along with specific pacing.
Right.
And so what Jay does is he will do layouts, just really rough layouts, just to show the basic storytelling, and we'll look at them and be like, okay, oh wait, can you maybe do something like this here? Or that bit that I wrote in is really important because it's 3 pages down, it's going to come in. Can you make sure that it's in the background there, or something like that? I was writing a scene where earlier today, where there's a particular item that a character is going to pick up and make note of it. So I wrote, in the page before, like, can we make sure that this is in the background? Because you see sort of this apartment and it's just like been ransacked. It's like, can you make sure we see this? Because that's going to be important. They're going to make note of it, and verbally and visually in the next page.
Yeah.
And then, you start seeing, like, once you sort of get on the same page with that, then it's a matter of, and Jay's doing everything digitally, so he will send digital inks, and then we'll add some texture with brushes and such. And we're working to find a good colorist for this, somebody who they think can really like elevate it. And we're bouncing names around and stuff, and we really want somebody who can capture the same feel and the same grittiness, but also in sort of the rich realm. You sort of see like everything is like almost clinical and sterile, and then you see, like, when you're in Rat City, like, there's literally not an inch of place that doesn't have like some type of grime on it.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Sounds pretty challenging for an artist and a colorist, right?
Yeah,
It's
and
awesome for a reader to be able to experience that, but it sounds like a lot of work.
it is, and we've bounced around a couple of names, and obviously like it has to do with like people's schedules and
Right.
such. Like you can't just be like, oh, so and so is going to work on this. No, because people have, they have jobs that they're already committed to. So it's a
Right.
matter of like, looking at someone's style, looking at what they think a page needs, what they think is going to elevate it. Because, and I've said this like 900 times, but like every comic should be like a good, like triple decker sandwich. Like you have a good script, good art, and then the coloring, everything just
Yeah.
elevates it more and more and more,
Yeah.
to really make everything coalesce
Hmm.
and to make everything really come together and just present the best possible story to your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so awesome. Can you also kind of talk to Peter's uniform and how that was designed? Was there a lot of back and forth as to like what you would like to see, and then he just kind of went and took it to a whole nother level? Like, how did that work? Because it's pretty awesome.
I gave very minor notes in terms of like the uniform. Like we wanted it to be tactical. We wanted Peter, in terms of body type, not to be this like brutish kind of guy. We wanted
Mhm.
him to be a little more lithe, a little more like Daredevil.
Yeah, yeah,
In terms of, not being like the triangle chest,
yeah,
like the giant Superman chest kind of thing.
yeah.
Um, and so we talked about that. We talked about like things being tactical. We talked about things being practical.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, we always think the 90s 900 pouches and everything.
The light
It's
field
like,
patches, yes.
and this one's for my Tic Tacs, and
Yeah.
this one's for my chapstick, kind of thing. But like
Yeah.
if you're a soldier, you're gonna want, this is gonna be where I keep extra clips, and this is where I'm gonna have an emergency MRE, and this is, and this is where I'm gonna have bandages, because everybody's got to have bandages on them,
Yeah.
even if you're not the medic in the in the unit.
Right.
So we sort of, each member of the team has a very similar outfit, but
Yeah.
it's a little tweaked to them specifically.
Mm.
And I mentioned aliens, the Marines from Aliens,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything. So I said, that's, but make it practical.
Right. Yeah.
And so that sort of became the uniform that he came up with, and the color scheme and everything. We wanted it to be, dark grays, not everything black, but dark grays with like red, with little red hints to
Hmm.
sort of homage the original Spawn.
Yeah.
And then also, when he has his prosthetic legs, you see he's got these, kind of tubes, and the way the leg is positioned, and how it's, sort of almost like the heel and the back of the calf like don't match. There's like a little space there and everything.
Yeah.
So I went and I just went crazy looking at different, types of prosthesis.
Yeah. Very
And
detailed. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, this is this is literally light years from what I used to call my grandfather's mannequin leg.
Yeah.
Like this is like light years
I
from
know.
that,
Yeah.
compared
That's
to
right.
like what he had, like that,
Yeah.
literally a plastic leg from the VA.
Yeah.
Um, and so Jay really just blew it out of the water with
Yeah.
all of it. And it's not just Peter who is an amputee. I mean, there's Reese, and there are other
That's
people that are
right. The
amputees
hands,
as
right.
well.
Hmm.
So he's designed arms, he's designed legs, he's designed, and everything. And it's really cool looking. It really is. And if anything, this is just going to be a really cool looking book.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
gonna be amazing. I'm really, really excited about it. So you're 3 or 4 books in. Does this launch in January? Is that when we expect issue 1, or
Spring.
is there a date yet? Oh, just spring.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
spring is what we're saying, because we're
yeah,
still looking for colorists.
yeah.
And I know that, I mean, me personally, I like to have a couple of books in the bank
Oh, yeah,
before launching, just in general.
yeah,
I know that that's not always it's not always possible on like a Marvel schedule. Sometimes you got to like rush things out.
yeah.
Um, but just for my comfortability, I would love to get like 3, 4 done, and then we launch. Because I know Jay's working on the second issue now.
Yeah.
He had done some, and he's been doing a bunch of Spawn covers as well. He's been doing Gunslinger covers and stuff. In between. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow, Erica, I don't know what to say. I mean, that is, I can't wait for it to come out. I'm super excited for you too to get that opportunity to have a book that goes beyond the 12. I think that's going to be awesome for you as well.
Scary, but yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's scary as hell. But I mean, you're working on Spawn, so it should be scary as hell, right?
Exactly.
So how often are you going back and forth with Tom, Healey, or Todd as far as how things are going? And is there still a lot of communication, or it's already over with and now you're really just in the grind, kind of going through everything? Because it's
there's still a lot of communication, because I always send outlines, and I always want to make sure that I'm on the same page. And once the outlines get approved, then I sort of like go off on my own. And do the scripts and such. So just before New York, I had already finished the script for 3. And I had sent the outlines for 4, 5, 6. And then Tom and I had a meeting at New York. And we were discussing stuff. And he's like, yeah, let's do this. Okay. Now 4, 5, and 6, just tweak those outlines. And now I'm off to, do the writing of it, because those are now like, those are pretty much set. And if something comes up and they want to change, just, shoot me an email, or like Tom's always quick to pick up the phone kind of thing and be like, hey, could we maybe do this, or maybe move this to the next issue or something like that? Okay, sure. And then this way, and then, when it comes to 7 through 12, I have an idea. I don't have it fully fleshed out what's going to happen, but then I'll just say, okay, this is my idea through 7 through 12. And then I'll break it down, issue 7, issue 8, and so on, and then get those approved. And then once they're approved, again, I'll just go off into my little corner and do the writing, and then come back.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, Todd has released some information for a few books that are coming next year. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but I'm really excited about Sam and Twitch too. But you're the first one where they've really kind of blown it out there and got Spawn fans pretty excited. I don't know if you're aware, but the first ever SpawnCon just happened this last weekend in Denver. Did you hear anything about it a little bit?
I heard that it was happening. And some people have sent me some shots from it.
Oh, good. I'm glad you knew about it. Yeah.
And I was just like, it's insane. I mean, it's great.
That's
I think
amazing.
it's great.
Yeah.
And part of me is kind of like, why haven't they had a SpawnCon?
Yeah.
And going on 33 years, why hasn't there been a SpawnCon? So, yeah.
Well, I have one person that I think you should follow on Instagram, and he goes by Spawn Hunter, if you're not already following him. And his name is Ty. And it was a whole team that put SpawnCon together. And Ty is one of those individuals that was part of that. He lives outside of Denver. That's why it was in Denver, because a lot of these Spawn fans that put SpawnCon together is there. An amazing human being, just a super awesome guy. He has the most insane collection of Spawn items you will ever see. And they're from all over the world. He has stuff from Peru, from Japan, from Germany, all Spawn, comic books. He owns every Spawn figure ever created from 1990. What was it, 94 is when he started the toys, all the way till now. I mean, he has a whole like section of the house that is a Spawn room that is insane. So you should really check it out, because Peter eventually will be a figure, and that
I know.
I mean, that's what I'm super excited about. As you're telling me all these things, I'm listening to these names, and I'm just waiting for Todd to come out and say, here's Peter, Rat City,
Cyber Spawn, that's pretty much what I'm waiting for. They had announced.
This is why I did it, right? This is why I wrote this, for that video.
Exactly. Well, I mean, they just announced that Hallows Eve is getting an action figure from Marvel
I just
Legends.
ordered mine today, actually, from Entertainment.
So I'm already like,
I saw your post about it. Did you order one?
I did not. My husband ordered it, because I was like, I'm not going to order it. I was like, I'm going to see if I'm going to see if they send me one. And my husband's like, we're going to order one. It's fine.
Just in case. Well, let's order.
Just in case. Those comps are a
Funny
little
though,
late
Erica,
sometimes.
is in like 3 years you get one from Marvel. Just to follow that
Probably.
every 2 years they contact you.
Probably. Well, I mean, like I made a joke that like now that I'm doing the Daredevil miniseries,
Yeah.
I made the joke of like, don't not call me, for another 3 years, please. Because I really do have some ideas here.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So as we have Rat City. It's going to come out in the spring.
yeah.
But what do you have going on from here up until that point? Because obviously you're still doing a lot of things with Marvel. We were
Yes.
talking, a little bit about November, December. Can you kind of share with us what's going on up until that point that fans could get excited about?
So November, we've got the end of November. I think the 29th is Marvel Zombies Black, White, and Blood,
No.
#2.
Yeah.
You have Daredevil Gang War #1 is in December, and then January, February, March for
Yeah.
those. And there's another Marvel one shot that they are going to be announcing soon.
Nice.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
That's going to be coming out, and Rat City will be starting in the spring, which I'm very, very excited about.
Yes.
And I'm working on the second volume of an independent work called Christabel. We did volume 1 on Kickstarter earlier this year. I'm working on the script for volume 2.
Really?
And those are each volume is 60 pages.
Oh wow.
So they take a bit. It's not like just writing a quick 20 page script. So yeah, each volume is 60 pages.
Wow.
So I have to coordinate with Amogoya Aguirre, who is the fantastic artist on that, just to make sure that the schedule is open and when they can start working on that.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, well, I mean, we'll see what else Marvel has for me. I know a lot of people really love Hallows Eve, and Hallows Eve, the big night, just came out.
Yeah.
The one shot, and we get to see Captain Eve when Hallows Eve puts on the Captain America costume. Mike Dowling kicked ass on that design, and Brian Reber just really killed it with the colors.
Yeah.
So I was really excited. I would love to see a Captain Eve as well. Like the Hallows Eve from Marvel Legends is great. I want to see Captain Eve. Although I've already looked at my husband's Captain Britain, and I've sort of found a way that I could maybe customize her
Get around
into a Captain Eve. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Love that.
Yeah.
That is super exciting. I mean, the Hallows Eve one, I was just glad it was still available because I do think that one. And then there was a Spider-Man one, not the Ben Reilly, but the other one that I think are going to go really fast. He has like a hoodie on. I don't know if you saw that Legend.
Oh yeah, it's like Spider-Man: The Last Shot or something.
Yeah, something like that. I have a feeling those two, the Hallows Eve and that one, will go pretty fast just because the style of clothing that he's wearing.
Yeah,
just could put him in all kinds of cool positions and stuff on YouTube and all that other stuff. So, but yeah, I think I picked up 4 today. $100 was my limit for today, so I have to be careful because I have some stuff that I ordered. Todd is killing me right now, and either I'm going to get divorced or go bankrupt. But he's been dropping figure after figure after figure this year,
and they're all amazing.
So I can't say no. I'm not a completionist. I don't have to have everything that he does. So when he comes out with a Lobo, and I already have a Lobo that I just got, I don't need the second Lobo. But then he puts it with the Lobo hog and the guitar and the dog. So now I need it. And so I'm trying to explain to my wife, it has things that I don't have, and that's why I need a second Lobo, right? So she just shakes her head. She's
what you could always do? You can always, I mean, like there's a good resale market, you could always turn around and say, okay, I will make a deal with you. I will sell the Lobo that I have to subsidize the new Lobo. I mean, my husband is a huge Transformers fan. And I keep saying, like, do we need 7, 12, 900 Optimus Primes? Like, maybe you can sell one Optimus Prime. Don't tell me you have the one that transforms.
I just got one. I don't know where my box is, but I just got the Lego one. I don't know if you've seen the Lego one. It's 13 inches. And then it transforms too once it's built, but it's a Lego. It's a crazy. And so I just finished, I did a live last night, and I finished his eyes, which is step 1. So now I got to do step 2. But yeah, you got to let him know. It's at Target on sale, just so you know.
Oh my God. Well, his birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks. So maybe I'll get that for him.
Yeah, very cool. So you can see my issue. She goes, it's not just one thing. You say it's one thing, it's not one thing. So
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like it was just Transformers, and now it's the GI Joe Classifieds,
yes.
and it's all of the reissue, the Filmation reissues of Masters of the Universe,
Oh yeah, and there's a
and
lot of
then
those too, by the way.
there's a lot of them, and then there's the Marvel Legends, and I'm like, I was like, really, really. So, I mean, I'm the type of person where I can fit my life in in like a bag.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, it's like literally just like grab the cat, put it in the bag, my laptop, and like
I'm
few
good.
pairs of clean underwear, and I'm good.
Yeah. You know
You
what's
know,
funny is I'm like that with like clothing and stuff like that, but when it comes to like the collection, I just can't stop. It's an addiction. I just love
I
it.
mean, I know a lot of people go crazy with the pops. I only have a couple of them. I will say I have 3 custom pops for the Deadliest Bouquet, which was the book that I had done for Image, and it's about these 3 sisters
Oh wow. I'll have to
who
look
are,
at
yeah, it's 3 estranged sisters who hate each other, come together after their mom's murder, and they have to solve their mom's murder before the cops do.
Oh, that's cool.
And it
That's
takes place in
really
1998.
yeah.
So this phenomenal guy named Viet he does custom pops, and
Oh
so I
wow.
had him do each one of the sisters
That is so
um,
cool.
for the custom pops, yeah, which was
Yeah.
very, very cool.
Well, Erica, I mean, is there anything else that we're missing that you want to share? Like what else have we not talked about that you got coming up, or did we pretty much cover everything?
I would say the only thing that people should run out and buy is Hallows Eve, the Big Night. The
Yeah.
Hallows Eve trade paperback is out. And if you missed it when it first came out, the Deadliest Bouquet trade paperback is out from Image.
Nice.
And there's a Spawn variant cover in that. So you should check it
Really?
out. Yes, because the last issue came out last December, and anyone who had an Image book had permission to do a Spawn variant. So
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Nice. We'll definitely look that up and make sure I got that in my collection. So,
awesome.
well, Erica, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, it was enjoyable for you. It definitely was for
Absolutely.
me. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm hoping we could do this again, especially maybe in the spring after you're a couple issues and you're not too,
Ah, yeah.
just to kind of see
I'll
how
still be nervous about it. Don't worry.
for sure. I mean, that just means you care, and I think that's pretty cool. But we're super excited about Rat City and everything else that's going on in Image Comics. Yeah, Image has meant a lot to me since the 90s, so I'm super excited to see how strong it is today. But thank you so much,
Thank
Erica. Really
and
appreciate
thank you for having me on too. I mean, it's always great to talk about the medium, and like
yeah,
the love that everybody has for this medium.
100%. Yeah. Well, until next time, Erica, I hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk very soon.
All right, take care.